Looking for a new read? Well, we found one that takes you back in time to explore how time, physical distance, and ideological differences can drive a wedge between even the closest of people. Here to tell us all about his book, Mingo, we have the author, Jeff Barnes. Good morning, Jeff. Thanks for taking time to talk with us.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
So tell us about your novel, Mingo.
Mingo, as you say, fictional story about brothers who become separated in 1908 upon the death of their mother. They were in Mingo County. Younger brother gets sent to Richmond, where he grows up privileged, and the older brother stays behind, toiling in the coal mines and watching their father descend into alcoholism. When the brothers reunite in 1920, they find themselves. They actually reunite on the day of the Matewan battle or massacre, and they find themselves on opposite sides of the coal mine war, hurtling towards the Battle of Blair Mountain, which we're about to celebrate the 102nd anniversary of that in just a couple of weeks.
Yeah, so you must have a connection with the area. So what inspired you to write a story centered around Mingo and all the mine wars?
Well, I grew up in Tazewell, Virginia, and some of your listeners and viewers may know is about 19 miles southwest of Bluefield, West Virginia. We got the Bluefield Daily Telegraph. We had to go to Bluefield for a fast food restaurant or to go to to a department store. So I had a pretty strong connection to Southern West Virginia. And my father was born in Pocahontas, Virginia in May of 1919, which was a year before the Battle of Matewan. And I was fascinated that a shootout could happen on a main street of a town in his lifetime, and a town very similar to his in broad daylight, involving dozens of pro-union coal miners and 11 Baldwin Felts agents. And I was just, how does that happen? So that fascination with that story, and I was also always intrigued by brothers who ended up on opposite sides of the Civil War. We grow up hearing blood's thicker than water, and if that's true, how do you end up opposing a brother in a conflict? So I thought I wanted to write a story about that. And as a kid, my father had told me that many of his best friends in Pocahontas were first generation Americans of Italian and Hungarian descent whose parents had come here looking for a better way of life. And I thought that, again, all of those things kind of came together. And John Sayles' 1987 movie Matewan was also an inspiration.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. So you talked about all the inspiration. What about your day job, your career as a trial lawyer? Did that have an influence on what you wrote?
Well, it did in the sense that, to be an effective trial lawyer, you have to be willing to kind of take the blinders off and try to see the other side. You've got another party, another lawyer who believe passionately in their case, and if you don't try to at least understand their side of the case, then you're going to have a hard time being effective advocate for your own client. And so the book, there's a line in the book that has resonated with a lot of people, and one of the characters says to another one, always remember that, or don't forget that a pancake always has two sides. And I think the point of that is to always be willing to try to understand the other side. May not always agree with them, but at least understand where they're coming from. And so this book, while it doesn't, draw any moral equivalency between the coal miners and the coal operators, it does. You do understand, or hopefully, if I've done it well enough, you understand how someone like the younger brother Durwood, who ends up in Richmond, could come down on the side of the coal operators, while his brother Bascom, who stayed behind working in the mines, would of course end up on the opposite side of this. They're both good people, good men. They love each other, but they ended up on opposite sides. And so it's this idea, and then trying to understand how the other brother was on one side led to the resolution of this.
Okay, so you have a book signing coming up this weekend. Tell us where we can see you and get the book and talk to you about it.
Sure. So tomorrow from 1 to 3, I'm going to be in Charleston at Taylor Books. And then tomorrow night, there's a production of Cole at the Chief Logan State Park in Logan. And I'm going to be there before and after the production of that, signing books. And then on Sunday, I'm going to be in Beckley at the Exhibition Mine from 10 to noon, and then at Tamarack from 1 to 4. So I'm going to be all about southern West Virginia this weekend, several different places, and I hope if your viewers are interested in this book and they happen to be in any of those areas, that they'll stop by.
Oh, wonderful. Well, Jeff, congratulations on the book, Mingo. Thanks for sharing it with us today on Studio 3.
Thank you so much for having me.